Representative Binetti, you are
Representative. Ooh, I got a upgrade.
board member.
Trustee.
Oh,
but Dave, you jerk. I mean,
Jesus.
I've been called a lot of these lately. So
I can't get the senators, representatives. Like, forget it, man. Dave Binetti, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Hey, welcome love the new digs here, man.
Yeah, great. Man. I upgraded from a garage to a basement. We're kind of moving up in the world. Neither one of them has windows, so there's that.
Well, that's fine. But I mean, I appreciate being here and I appreciate you taking the time because it's nice to actually have somebody that supports independent Idaho voices. It's nice to be able to go to new media versus legacy media, which we've may have different objectives. So good to get to the truth.
I get hammered by both sides all day long. The right hates me. The left hates me. It's like, I don't even, what's interesting? They couldn't even articulate my position on a policy. They just hate that I talk to people like normal people. It's like, I'm just curious what the position is. I'm a nobody. I don't have any effect on policy. I'm not like, I vote like once a year, like unless there's
Robert Frost. It's much better to be curious than judgmental, and sadly, I think we're more on the latter, particularly with regard to this issue. Right?
Okay, so look, I did this episode is obviously right on the tails of Marcus Myers, explaining what functionally happened in West Ada, how he was delivering policy, how he was delivering a message from a team of people that had determined something was inappropriate. He just happens to be at the losing end of, okay, I'm the one who has to talk to somebody. Now, mind you, if there was a gal named Susie who had to talk to everybody, I'm sure Susie would be here, because what has happened is there was a policy put in place years ago that Marcus Myers was not involved in creating and directing in the district. There was a policy put in place at the direction of the Board of Education of West Ada that articulated neutral classrooms. And the neutral classroom policy was, look, we're not going to tell you what you can't have. We're going to tell you only what you can have, and what you can have has to have a meaningful curricular tie. That's it. And anything outside of that, we are here for curriculum. We are here to produce children at the end of 12th year that go on to be successful, and our curriculum is our way to do that. That's what we're focusing on. Help me understand why that's the policy.
Sure. So, I'll have to start with the disclaimer that I'm speaking on behalf of myself and I don't represent the board, don't represent you. So anyway, got to get that out of the way. But that said, the board did vote on unanimously a policy that was put in place in August of 2022 that had represented about, 3 months of work. Where we said, look, we're starting to get a lot of concerns that the classrooms are being used as platforms for things that are they're orthogonal to learning. Like they don't have anything to do with learning. They're political concerns, they're social concerns. And we're getting a lot of, feedback from the patrons and saying, look, we just really want you to focus on education. Your schools, can you please do the schooling thing? And so we said, sure. But, the teachers are we love our teachers. The teachers do a spectacular job, of course. And so they wanted to make sure that they knew and were comfortable with this as well. So it's a 3-month process and bringing everybody involved, bringing the teachers involved, bringing the administrators involved, patron input, union representation, and everybody got together in a room with the singular purpose of how do we maintain the focus on education and how do we protect our teachers so that they can teach? Because the last thing that we want to do is have our teachers become the center of a controversy, right? Because somebody decides that they're, going to make them the centerpiece of something,
just accidentally.
Or accidentally.
Right? Like you could have, we could say somebody might engage in overt action to make controversy, or that somebody just, oh, I hadn't seen it that way, or I didn't think about it that way, or I've always had this up in the room and, oh gosh, the world has changed around me, right? And therefore we change.
Yeah, and so the point was to do that. It was a fully collaborative process. It went through multiple readings, as it always does, available for public comment. But it was non-controversial, of course, because what are we here for? We're here to educate kids, right? And so that was put into place in August of 22. And so there isn't anything more to that. That's just how it was. So and how it is, and for the longest time, that's been perfectly fine. And so then we've had this instance come up, and the most interesting thing about this to me, of course, is ultimately that, my goodness, we are all on the same page. Nobody is making a contrary argument. Everybody agrees that everybody is welcome in West Ada. Our board agrees with that. Our teachers agree with that. Our administrators agree with that. Our parents agree with that. Of course, everybody agrees with that. That's self-evidently true. And so having to have this sort of counter argument, which becomes intrinsically political, which of course is exactly what we're trying to avoid with the 401(2) policy. We're trying to avoid exactly what has happened here, which is something that has turned into a fundamentally political thing. There's really no discussion or no debate, and nobody's making a counter argument. It's self-evidently true. It's already written in every classroom. It's written down. In every classroom, it's posted in every classroom. And so I think the point of contention then suddenly became, well, no, we need to look this way. And it's like, well, no, we have the guidance. We've worked with teachers. We've worked with administrators. We've set the guidelines. We've had an opportunity to discuss this. And, this is really not fitting in with the consistency that we're trying to do in our classrooms. And that's really when, our administration and Marcus was a part of a team, but basically saying, look, we're trying to make this consistent so that our messaging is clear. We don't have any controversy. We stay focused on learning. We stay focused on educating. We don't bring in any of these, questionable things. And this is particularly germane because there's now going to be a law. It may even be signed by the time we're actually have this interview air, that is specifically prohibited against exactly the type of signage that's in question. And we want to get ahead of this. We don't want to be in violation of the law, of course, because anything that gets in the way of education, anything that is as a distraction to that, is something that is just hard on kids. So we're in the business of educating everybody. We serve 89 languages. We serve all kinds of different groups from different countries and people that are coming here looking for the best opportunity, the best education that they provide. And yes, of course, they're welcomed. And so the thing that's so disappointing is that because we've had this action, because, we have involved the news media who have their own agenda, right? And their agenda doesn't have anything to do with educating kids, right? And the news media's agenda is to stir up controversy, and they're very good at it. And so it's really disappointing that one of our magnificent, wonderful educators who we completely agree with on the sentiment, no discussion, no debate, 100% agreement on this, 100% alignment. Yes, of course, everybody is welcome. And now you have to be forced to respond to this. Well, if it's not this sign, then clearly you're racist. You must be a racist because otherwise, why wouldn't you be behind this sign? Which again is exactly what our policy is trying to avoid. It's exactly what this presumably new law that's going to be put into place is designed to avoid. It's designed to avoid that division and that rancor and that fundamental political friction that frankly just doesn't belong in our classrooms, and certainly not at this level. So yeah, that's what, but no good deed goes unpunished. And it's sad because again, like the point is stay focused on learning, stay focused on education, and all the time that we're having to spend that has absolutely nothing to do with education, has absolutely nothing to do with making our kids better. And Marcus in particular, who is our chief academic officer, who has overseen over the past 2 years, since we put that policy in place, since we put the focus back on the kids, back on education, back on learning what we're supposed to do as kids. We have now seen the highest scores we've ever recorded in math, the highest scores we've ever recorded in reading. We're top of Idaho easily in the large districts. And then what did we have to do last year? Well, we had to beat that record. So again, we posted highest ever in math, highest ever in reading. And it's really interesting because if you take the West Data School District through the same testing mechanism and you make us our own little thing and act as if we were a state, then we'd be better than every other state in the nation in reading and second only to Connecticut in terms of math across the entire country, just West Data. That's a result of Marcus focusing on academics. His title, Chief Academic Officer, not Chief Political Officer, not Chief, Arbiter Officer. We don't want them to have to make these decisions, right? So we just said, just keep it neutral. And does that mean that some messages with which we clearly all agree, again, we all agree that everybody is welcome. Does that mean that sometimes those get caught in a filter? Yeah, sometimes it is, because we really want to err on the side of focusing on education, focusing on teaching our kids, focusing on improving those scores so that next year we can have a third in a row of the top. And so anytime we lose sight of that because we're having to, have discussions with news media, it just takes us away from what we're here to do, which is to help our kids. And so, yeah, it's really disappointing.
Okay. I hear everything you're saying, and then I look at everything that has happened in the wake of this.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely a part of me, and I've heard other people say, they're like, dude, why don't you just let them keep the poster? Like just one, like, does the district need all this? Like the kids haven't benefited. Like you could have just let her keep the poster. Like what would you say to somebody who was like, dude, it's one post. Look at everything that happened. Look at everything that happened here. Yeah. Just let her. Is that worth one poster? What do you think?
Well, the policies of the district are put together by the Board of Trustees, and we ask and frankly insist upon the administration to actually adhere to them, right? And so the reality is, if any teacher, whether it be Sarah or somebody else, is able to effectively say, I don't agree with it, and so I'm going to do my own thing. Sadly, that's just not something that we can do. I mean, the elected Board of Trustees made this policy. We're expecting it to be enforced. Every teacher has to sign a contract that says, look, we're going to enforce the policies of the district, right? That's just part of what you do. And so when anybody would actually say, well, no, I don't like this one, so I'm not going to do this one because I want it to look this way, even though, again, the message is already in the classroom. It's already there. It doesn't look exactly this way that somebody might want. Okay, well, you still have to enforce, our policies still have to be enforced. And so if we look the other way, then what we have to say is, okay, well, what other policies aren't being enforced? Do we have to be concerned about that? Are we concerned that we're going off trail of curriculum? And look, there hasn't been any implication of that, and I don't want to say that in this particular measure, with this exception, because, when you go and you outright say to news media, yeah, we're just, I don't like this one, so I'm not going to do it. There's processes in place that we have as a district to allow for grievances to be mentioned, and that affects everybody as well. So to have that opportunity to say, yes, if you don't like this, great, let's go through the process. Let's lodge a formal complaint. Let's adjudicate it. Let's continue to talk about it. Let's figure out what the solution could be. Let's figure out, and it looks like Marcus actually came up with, at least to me, seems like a reasonable compromise. We don't want to get in.
And to reiterate those, I believe he said that, he said, look, don't take it down right now. Let's wait until the summer. Don't distract with the learning environment. And then over the summer, we'll work with you to find something that hits the sentiment that you want. And we, West Data, will actually pay for it. Excuse me. So offering to replace it and emphasizing, look, we do not agree with the spirit of this at all. Everyone is welcome. Absolutely. And if you just want to put up a black and white sign that says everyone is welcome, that wouldn't even be a problem. But again, let's find something that you feel like honors your sentiment and fits within our policy. And let's work together on that. And we will foot the bill for that, but definitely don't distract from learning right now.
Yeah, and that's the part that's so disappointing, because as soon as we go outside the grievance process, as soon as we start to do something like go to the news media directly as a solution, as opposed to trusting the people that you work with and your colleagues, that's just I'm just so disappointed, right? I mean, I really wish that a different choice had been made there, right? And it's not just because we're currently being distracted from this environment, but it's really the way that it should be, honestly, right? Because then we don't have to worry about administration. Nobody has to worry about whether or not certain policies are being enforced and other policies are being enforced. I mean, that's always a big concern of our patrons. It's like, are we teaching what we say we are teaching? And right. In order for us to have trust in that, we have to know and expect that all of our employees are doing the level best. And of course, everyone makes mistakes, and we correct those mistakes very often, right? But again, it's done in the spirit of collaboration. Let's work with you. Let's go ahead and figure out what the way that this should be done. But that nothing involved in our policy involves, going to the media, because now it's suddenly a political issue. It's a distraction issue. It's taking away from the things that should be focused on, which is educating our kids. And that's just, it's really disappointing.
Speaking of the grievance policy, it's my understanding that the letter goes out like a week or two ago saying, sure, hey, you got to take this thing down. Mm-hmm. Not right now, but like eventually. You got to take down the summer. So the whole letter with the options and, hey, we'll support you in figuring out a replacement, mm-hmm, that goes out like a week or two ago.
Yep.
If she didn't like that, what is the grievance process by which she could engage in that it does not include the news media, but includes like properly vetted and classic, like I don't know anything about organizations, so like HR channels or something where, sure, it's like, hey, I don't agree with this. I don't like this. I want to file an official complaint.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what is that process? What could she have done? Who does she talk to?
Yeah. So we all have it stipulated, and the minutia of it is fairly complicated, but
I just want to make sure she wouldn't have to like report directly to Marcus. She's like, well, there's no reason for me to file a complaint because I have to file the complaint with Marcus, and he's the guy who told me to do this. So it's like, of course I had to go to the news media. Like,
so the ultimate arbiter of everything is the Board of Trustees.
Okay.
Right. So there's an escalation process, and at every point, and this is true of patrons, this is true of everybody. You can say, I disagree with this point that was made. And then there's escalation. It depends on, this is why it depends on where you start versus where you end and so forth. And we're very thoughtful about this because, of course, we really want to make sure that we handle these things in the most professional manner possible, right? And we want to get to the right solution. And that doesn't mean that everybody's always going to get what they want, right? But that you have to sort of respect the decision that was made, because otherwise, people just make their own decisions and suddenly you can't manage anything, right? Standard stuff, right? I mean,
sure.
So, and anybody who has a job, I mean, they're very familiar with this, right? If your boss has something, they tell you to do something, you say, okay. And then you try to work it out with your boss, and maybe you talk to the boss's boss, and there's,
sure.
I mean, it's just everybody is subject to those same rules. And so we have a similar process in that. And that ultimately the arbiters of that is the board of trustees. And that's on everything, right? That's on everything from the resources that we choose, the curriculum that's put into place, employee considerations, everything that we do. Ultimately, the board of trustees is responsible for it because we set the policy for the district. We're the elected representatives of the people, and we're ultimately the ones who decide. Now, that doesn't mean that you get what you want every time, but there is a process that is involved with that to continue to escalate. And so that's really what I wish had happened here. If I have a magic wand, and it's not just because I personally feel that's the most professional way to handle it. I also just feel that, again, the news media has a different objective, right? And I feel that the news media took advantage of the genuine desire that we all have, that we share with Sarah. Complete agreement. Again, 100% agreement. Completely share the agreement. But that was used to shade and color that in a very different way, that it has become this divisive issue right now. And very directly so. Like, media is like literally saying, like, we're going to pit one side against the other. Really, really unfortunate, particularly in a school environment, right? And so, but that's really the part about this that's just the most disappointing, that we're all on the same page. Everybody is on the same page. We all believe that everybody is welcome. We do our level best every time. It's a sign in every classroom already. Our teachers are instructed in that way, and we've never heard anything to the contrary, right? We haven't heard examples of that to the contrary, and then suddenly everybody's talking about that right now, like who's racist and who's not. Oh boy, that's such a terrible thing to happen, particularly in our schools. And I just feel so awful for everybody involved.
I hear you on everything you just said. I worry about the continued sustainability of our public education system. I worry about it a lot.
How so?
In that this situation here is only it furthers to exacerbate the conflict, because everybody who is concerned, and again, I don't know, I'm not involved in this policy. I was not involved in the decision with this, but I do know that across the country, people are now getting worked up. And I know across the country, because somebody from California hit me up on Instagram today, and this guy, Dave, who like works in Sonoma or something, and he hit me up today. He's like, is this in your area? It's like, oh my God, man. So there's a broader cultural sentiment that is this like moving target around public schools. Yeah. A lot of what has happened in the last 10 to 15 years is negative public sentiment towards public schools, right? And criticisms of the, people that are more conservative saying that these schools are filled with like groomers and crazy people. And it's like, okay, that's this idea, like the libs of TikTok, right? Like people, getting mad at more liberal or left-leaning people. And then there's a reactive sentiment that's erupted incredibly over the last 3 years, which is, the schools going a little bit more conservative, and the liberals getting mad at the schools for not doing things like more rainbow things, right? And ultimately, the schools are trapped in the middle between these two groups, beating the hell out of the schools because they want the schools to be the champion for their issues. And that, to me, is like, we'll never learn geometry. Like, we'll never get across the finish line and keep going and we've seen obviously what happened now in Idaho with school choice, which is that there were enough people that were unhappy enough about the schools that now we're, funding alternate schools. And I'm all for educational contracts. It's not a school choice conversation, but the bottom line is, it's like, how do we get schools to work for everyone? That's the ultimate question. How do we get schools that work for everyone? And I hear people time and time again say, get all that conservative, like don't have religion separation, just teach. Right? It's like, and then you have the other side, get rid of all the grooming and the rainbows, just teach. And it's like, okay, if we just teach, If that's really what we want, then when somebody veers away, I'm pro-education. If somebody veers away from just teaching, then it should be my policy and should be my sentiments. Like, that's not like, I want math. I want grammar. I want reading. I want the 3 R's primarily. And here we are as a community wondering or being told that West Ada is not inclusive with everyone's like, I want geometry. Like, yeah, I want everybody to learn geometry. I don't, and I worry about this because, like, how do we even work through this? How do we keep people engaged effectively in funding our schools that our children go to? I have 3 kids that go to Idaho schools. These are not private schools. Like, they go to Idaho schools that are funded by Idaho taxpayers. And man, the worse it looks for Idaho schools, the more it's like, God, it's just going to get worse for my kids.
Well, I'm sorry to feel, but I think the direct answer to your question is, it's exactly what we've done over the last 2 years. We put a policy into place to put the focus back on education. Since then, we had the highest ever in reading, highest ever in math, exceeded only by the year that followed. Again, highest ever in reading, highest ever in math. That's not by accident. That's because we made a concerted effort, led by Marcus Myers, our chief academic officer, to focus on education, to provide the tools that our instructors need. And everything was wonderfully, marvelously boring because we just focused on boring stuff. Educating kids. Simple. Not trying to change the world, not trying to grab banners and man the barricades. And we've managed for 2 years to be able to just say, yeah, this is how we're going to do it. And we're going to be really straightforward and really simple and really focus on the basics and look for consistency in the classroom, look for a consistency in our messaging, and look at the results. They speak for themselves. And again, that's why it's really disappointing because, we're going to continue to exceed. I mean, we're going to get past this, of course, right? It's going to pass because we're doing the right thing and we always have done the right thing. We're going to continue to do the right thing. Again, we're all on the same page. Everybody is welcome. You don't have to make the counter argument because nobody's making it. We're all focused on exactly the same thing. And so the more that we can avoid distractions like that and return to that, then we can continue to say continued improvement on those things. So for me, public education is spectacular because we're delivering exactly what we want. We're delivering higher degrees of academic achievement, literally nation leading in terms of where we're performing academically. We have over 80% participation in our career and technical education certifications so that if college is they can have both college and career preparation within this district. And we're just plodding along, just doing it without having to worry about, whether we're on social media or whether we're getting clicks or whether on the news. And we don't care about any of that. None of that helps our kids. We're focused on the kids. Like, to what degree can we keep this focused on the kids, keep this focused on education, keep it focused on the welcoming message because it's in there. It's already in there. Was in there, will continue to be in there, and maintain that high degree of performance that we've seen, right? So is it always going to be? No, it's not always going to be perfect because, anybody can do anything at any time, as we saw with the book thing at graduation last year, right? But again, that passed, that came, and everybody got their views, and then we went back to educating kids. So that'll happen here as well. We'll get back to educating kids. And I hope that the disruptions are minimal. I know that there will be people that will try to take advantage of that. I mean, it's funny because we've been getting a lot of messages. And as you mentioned, California, we're getting a lot of messages from out of state, messages from out of country, and definitely messages from within the district. But it's actually a relatively small percentage of the overall messages. Right? The parents with kids in the district, as best as we can tell, are largely saying, yeah, it's the right policy. It is the right policy because, yes, obviously you should be focused on education. And yes, you're clearly doing a good job because your scores are going up. Your CTE participation is going up. Your taxes are going down. This is what I hope for public education across the nation. I hope that West Ada continues to be a model for that. And there are going to be people that disagree, people that feel that we need to take stronger political stances or social stances. And I get it. And I respect that, right? By all means. And I'm sure that we'll have people that will take advantage of that and take advantage of this situation. But when it comes to our classrooms and our schools, I mean, the 401(2) policy was directly specifically to our classrooms, how they look. Is our education environment focused on education? Is the learning environment learning focused? are the things that distract from that. And look, I mean, this is not the first time that we've done this, and we've had signs all over the place, and they do not fit a consistent message of whether or not someone would consider them canonically right or canonically left. They're all over the place. We don't care. We don't care, because we're not in the business of adjudicating what political signage is. Like that's not our job, right? And it's not something we're trained or particularly qualified for. And so everybody's focusing on this, everyone is welcome message. And again, just reinforcing, because there seems to be a lot of confusion. Everybody's on the same page. We're all together on this. Everybody is welcome. But if you just go type everyone is welcome, and just go look at some of the signage that comes up, not all of it would be considered benign. Some of it are making some pretty strong political statements, right? And so if you focus just on those words without the overall context, okay, well, you're missing half the story. Because yes, we're all in agreement. Everyone is welcome. But we're now facing a state law that is saying you can't racialize those statements, right? So, okay, if we can't racialize those statements, then, this is pretty clearly in violation of that. Well, anyway, in my estimation, I'm not the one who, but that seems pretty clearly in violation of that upcoming law. So we want to get ahead of this. I mean, and it's what we do with everything. We want to avoid distractions by removing cell phones from the classroom. We want to get ahead of issues by doing all the work that was necessary under House Bill 521 so that we are able to produce new campuses, with the new funding that's been made available to us. And just at this meeting, right before everything blew up, we just approved moving forward with the construction documents of a new school in Star, which will help alleviate a lot of the overcrowding that we have in that Star area, and the fact that we have kids that are being bused 45 minutes away to Eagle schools. And we just did that on Monday. And my gosh, wouldn't that be wonderful to talk about? Wouldn't it be wonderful to talk about expanding our CTE offerings and bringing more people involved in that? Wouldn't it be wonderful to talk about our test scores and our improvement and our general degree of satisfaction overall, right? And that's why I'm so disappointed that this has now sort of overtaken that, right? And that we've had to spend this week that we'll never get back, right? Focusing in on this. And that's disappointing. But, the reality is those results speak for themselves. The academics speak for themselves. The CTE speaks for themselves. The getting ahead of issues, not waiting for them to become a problem, but being proactive so that we're going to be able to have a new school, hopefully in Star. We started the process. We have a long way to go before the ground is broken, but we've started down that direction, so that we have an anticipated opening of July of 2026. That's marvelous. That's wonderful. Like, let's talk about those things, right?
Trusty Binetti. Man, better you than me.
Well, yeah. Like I said, no good deed goes unpunished. But, we just really want to appreciate, all of our teachers and all of our administrators and all the people who are doing their best under struggles, under situations that they didn't ask for any of this. I mean, nobody gets into teaching to be accused of not being welcoming. I mean, really, we really need to be serious about this. Like, that's not the issue. And so focusing in on it, it's just disappointing. I wish people would really focus in on the central core mission of what we're trying to accomplish: teaching kids and all of our kids, every single one of them who's welcome at West Ada, and providing for them the best possible education.
Well, listen, man, thank you for explaining all of this. Thank you for coming in and talking with me, taking the time, and man, I hope everything works out for you guys.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.